Salutation, my esteemed students of Siege Warfare, and welcome back to another lecture with your professor, Professor Siege Captain. We are going to be doing another installment where Professor Siege Captain attempts to rank every siege weapon throughout history. And today's lecture topic is as ancient and as simple as they come. Somebody call OSHA to make sure that ladder safety is being followed. That's right, we're going to be talking about scaling ladders. Make sure you stay for my whole lecture so your ladder engineering doesn't get your entire assault force massacred at your next siege. To begin the lecture, I would like to give you some historical context.
Professor, this is a ladder, not a siege weapon. Are we really gonna have an entire lecture on a device that you can get up onto a roof?
Oh, my dear student, tell me you've never been at a siege without telling me you've never been at a siege. All right, class, listen up. The scaling ladder is the ultimate way to keep the defenders on their toes. With the scaling ladder, your entire army can overcome the walls at a moment's notice. Nothing is going to keep the defenders more paranoid than knowing their town could be invaded at any second. Siege ladders are such an effective tactic and such a long-lasting tactic, they get their own name. That name is an escalade. Scaling ladders come to us from around the 28th century BC. That is when they entered the siege meta, and they absolutely refused to leave the game. The earliest depictions of a scaling ladder comes to us from the Egyptians. We can see them climbing up this ladder during a siege. This comes from a tomb in the 28th century BC. Around then, when you get that old, it's kind of hard to date things. Make sure you guys climb down the ladder into the comments and let me know if you remember sieging in the 28th century BC. Really the golden years, weren't they? A more certain date we have is this Assyrian relief here. Now look at these chads climb this ladder. Look at these soldiers walking on the ladders like it's a pair of stairs. They're maintaining their fighting pose. You got a couple of lads in the back ready to shoot arrows from the ladder. It's not a good day to be a citizen of Nineveh in the 7th century BC. That's the kind of training your soldiers need to have. Make sure they can use ladders hands-free, allowing them to keep up their defense and deal some damage. The idea of a scaling ladder is beautifully simple. Step 1, you're gonna build the ladders. Step 2, climb the walls. Why waste all the time destroying the walls when you can simply just ignore them? This is the siege equivalency of working smarter, not harder. Though, the soldier that has to climb the ladder will probably disagree about the smarter part. The siege ladders were used from the dawn of siege warfare all the way until gunpowder made tall walls obsolete. Is there anything gunpowder doesn't ruin? With all that historical context said, this is going to lead us to the weapon specifications. A siege ladder is about the simplest siege device to make. This means you didn't need to wait for all the egghead engineers and baggage train with specialized tools to get to the siege camp in order to start building. Day 1 of camp, get the soldiers together and have a little ladder building activity. Just like the soldiers, ladders will come in all shapes and sizes. You can build them skinny so one person can go up them, or you can build them wide so you can have 3 or 4 men standing side by side going up the ladder together. You can shape them like stairs so that they're easier to walk on, though that does take a little bit more craftsmanship. The biggest trick to a siege ladder is getting the height just right. A problem arises if you build your ladders too tall. Now you got this part of the ladder hanging over the walls, and it is a ripe target for enemy soldiers to push them over. Toppling over your ladder will cause your soldiers to make historically accurate screaming noises. That's not what we're looking for. Now, if you build the ladder too short, well, I hope even you can see why that's a problem. The trick is to get them just right so they line up perfectly with the top of the wall. This would lead ancient siege mathematicians to devising formulas. Measure the shadow of the wall against the shadow of a pole of known length. This can give you a rough estimate of how tall the walls are and how tall you need to build your siege ladders. Make sure you wrote that down. It will be on the test.
Professor, why don't you just build the ladder so long that it can kind of lay at a flatter angle, making it almost impossible for the enemy soldiers to push over, and giving your soldiers a nice ramp to walk up rather than climbing on a ladder?
Wow, what a brilliant idea. A brilliant idea coming from someone who's never tried to carry a telephone pole-sized ladder across the battlefield. Then try to set up that telephone pole in just the right position on the enemy wall. Try doing all this well under archer fire. You're gonna not want a ladder that big anymore, now are ya, bud? Also, as the ladder angle gets flatter and flatter, they get more prone to breakage. You're gonna have 4, 5, 6, 7 fully armored men trying to go up this ladder at one time. With your super long ladder, it's gonna break. Armored men are not light. You know, student, if you would just think for a second, maybe you wouldn't ask such stupid questions. Another pro tip for you, you're gonna wanna focus on quantity. The more ladders you have means the more thinly spread the defenders will be. In addition, with more ladders means more troops can get up the wall at any given time. There are historical accounts of Romans deploying over 2,000 siege ladders at a single siege. That's just insane. How are you gonna stop 2,000 ladders letting soldiers climb up your walls at a constant stream? Quantity, not quality. Though again, the soldiers who are climbing the ladders might want you to focus on quality just a little bit. Now, I know I've talked a pretty big game about the siege ladder. They weren't all sunshine and rainbows. The defenders had plenty of counterplay options. And we have already touched on a couple of these counterplay options. One of them being push the ladders over. You could use a long plank or a pry bar, slide it on in between the ladder and the wall, and just lever the ladder off the wall. Give me a lever long enough and a place to stand, I'll push over any siege ladder. That's what some guy said, right? Simply drop a big object on a guy climbing a ladder. Even if he is in his fighting pose holding a shield, get a big enough rock. His shield is not going to be stopping that big rock. In addition to big rocks, imagine rolling a giant log down that ladder. You're basically standing on a log chute ready to be knocked over like dominoes. Speaking of dominoes, if you push a ladder over sideways, it's going to have a domino effect on all the ladders next to him. And a brilliant counterplay tactic that is probably my favorite way to defend against ladders, get a guy standing at top of the ladder with a big axe. This is whack-a-mole in the siege warfare world. Guy comes up ladder, whack! Big axe takes care of him. This is a very effective counterplay, and another reason why you need to focus on quantity, because there can only be so many people with axes atop the walls. When building your ladders, get creative. What is the ladder but a device ready for equipment? You can build an armored tunnel. This will protect your men from archer fire while on the ladder. You can build ladders with gangplanks, and this is just some kind of weird pseudo siege tower laddery device. You can build a ladder with this weird arm on it. Now you can try to stand on top of your ladder and pour hot liquid down on the defenders. This one seems a little silly to me. Give it a shot, why not? And to summarize, we're gonna go over some quick pros and cons of the siege ladder. Siege ladders were easy to build. The common soldier could build them, can spread the defenders quite thin. Since they're easy to build, you can build a lot of them and potentially overcome the walls. If you do overcome the walls, this is what the point of the siege ladder really is. It can end sieges insanely fast. The ultimate rush strategy, high risk, high reward. And the cons of the siege ladder, as we already discussed, the defenders are always doing something. That's one of the hard parts about siege warfare, is your opponent's always trying to make moves to stop you from achieving your goal. The ladder is pretty easy to stop. Push the ladder over, drop big objects on it, have a guy with an axe standing atop the ladder. Any of those will do to stopping the ladder. And probably the biggest con is it's really hard to get your soldier to climb up those ladders. He knows on top of the ladder there's a guy with an axe waiting for him. That's a job Professor Siege Captain would not be caught dead doing. I'm not gonna be the first or second guy to climb a siege ladder. I may be the third guy. I'm definitely gonna keep a close eye on how those first two fared. If there's a guy with an axe up there, I'm not going up. And this leads us to Professor Siege Captain's 100% historically accurate ranking of the siege ladder. I'm gonna give the siege ladder a B tier ranking. These devices are very effective when they work. They can end sieges in an instant. They're easy to build, and you don't really need to consider any logistics, but that's just it. When they work, they're an amazing tool. They're really easy to stop though. Plenty of counterplay options to stop a ladder from working. Also doesn't really help in destroying the walls or advancing the state of the siege. Things like undermining and sapping the walls will progress your siege progress, or pelting the defenders with projectile will lower their morale. Yes, the siege ladder kinda has a psychological effect that thousands of men could be climbing the walls at any second, but maybe that would be a morale booster to the defenders, because now you get to play whack-a-mole with your axe. And that's all the time we have for today's lecture. Professor Siege Captain is an eternal student himself. Get down in the comments and let him know your favorite ladder facts. Also, let him know if he missed any cool facts about escalades or siege ladders. Maybe even I misconstrued some facts. Let me know down below. I love learning about sieges, siege devices, siege weapons, whatever. It warms my heart to learn about siege. Also, if you want to continue the dialogue in a better spot, I started up a Reddit. I went on Reddit and looked up siege weapons. There was no siege weapon Reddit. Can you believe it? I couldn't. I took it upon myself to bless the world with a siege weapon Reddit. It's called Siege Weapons of History. It will be linked in the description below. Go give that a follow and post your favorite siege weapon. Maybe I'll do my next episode on your favorite siege weapon. That would be kind of cool. And as always, thank you for giving me some of your time. Time is a finite resource, and it really means a lot that you spent it with me. Class dismissed, ladder scalers. Go ahead and siege the day.